The first rays of Hamora's twin suns stretched across the crimson desert, casting long shadows behind the research station's temporary structures. Leo Tran stood at the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the red sand met the dusty pink sky. 2 years of specialized training, countless simulations, and 3 months of space travel had brought him to this moment, his first sunrise on an alien world. He adjusted the environmental controls on his lightweight field suit, allowing himself to feel the genuine chill of the morning air, rather than relying on artificial temperature regulation. Leo had always believed that to truly understand a new environment, one must experience it as authentically as possible. Recording data log, day 47 on Hamora. He spoke into his wrist communicator. Atmospheric composition remains stable, radiation levels within acceptable parameters for short-term exposure. Beginning morning survey of Sector G9. At 29, Leo was the youngest xenobiologist on the expedition, having earned his place through groundbreaking research on adaptive biological systems. Yet, despite his professional accomplishments, a persistent emptiness followed him across the galaxy. On Earth, connections had always been difficult. Colleagues respected his brilliance, but kept their distance from his intensity, and romantic relationships invariably dissolved under the weight of his dedication to work. Here, millions of miles from home, he hoped to find something meaningful, perhaps not connection with another person, but with the universe itself. He descended from the observation platform, his boots leaving neat imprints in the red sand. The portable scanner in his hand beeped steadily, measuring radiation signatures and molecular compositions. This morning ritual had become a form of meditation for Leo, a moment of solitude before the station's 16 other researchers awoke and the day's structured activities began. His scanner suddenly emitted a high-pitched alert, pulling him from his thoughts. Leo frowned, adjusting the settings. The device indicated an unusual energy, reading approximately half a kilometer east. Nothing dangerous, but definitely anomalous compared to the baseline they'd established in previous weeks. "Station, this is Tran," he spoke into his communicator. "Detecting unusual energy signature in Sector G9. Proceeding to investigate. Will maintain open channel." Only static answered him. The communication system often struggled in the early morning hours, when Hamora's magnetic field fluctuated most strongly. Leo considered returning to the station to report the anomaly, but decided against it. The reading was well within safe parameters, and he'd been specifically tasked with cataloging precisely these types of variations. As he walked, following the scanner's guidance, the first peculiarity he noticed was a set of impressions in the sand. Not the neat, uniform tracks left by the expedition's vehicles and boots, but massive, irregular depressions, as though something enormous had walked across the desert floor. Each depression was nearly 2 meters across. Leo knelt beside one of the impressions, running his gloved fingers along its edge. The sand had been compacted with significant force, yet there was a gentleness to the impression, lacking the sharp edges that would indicate a heavy mechanical object. "Curious," he murmured, taking samples and images. The scanner continued to beep more insistently as he followed the trail of impressions eastward, toward a cluster of rock formations they had nicknamed the Sentinels, for their towering, humanoid silhouettes against the horizon. The air around him seemed to change as he approached the formations, not in composition, according to his readings, but in feeling. A subtle vibration, almost musical in its rhythm, ran through the ground beneath his feet. Leo paused, suddenly aware of how far he had wandered from the station and how utterly alone he was on this alien landscape. Or perhaps not alone at all. The shadow fell across him without warning, massive and unmistakably bipedal. Leo froze, his scientific training battling with primal instinct. Slowly, he raised his head. She towered nearly 13 feet tall, her silver-toned skin catching the morning light in iridescent patterns that shifted with each breath. Her proportions were humanoid, but elongated, with four-fingered hands and a face that was both alien and expressively familiar. Large, luminous eyes, a deep violet that seemed to contain galaxies, studied him with unmistakable intelligence, and something else Leo couldn't immediately identify. Curiosity, fear, concern? Neither moved for several heartbeats. Leo's mind raced through protocols for first contact scenarios, but all seemed woefully inadequate for this moment. The being before him was nothing like the microbial or insectoid life forms they had expected to find on Himora. He slowly raised his empty hands, palms forward, the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "Hello," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Leo." The silver being tilted her head, a gesture so human it momentarily disoriented Leo. Then, with a grace that defied her enormous size, she bent down toward him. Leo tensed but held his position, determined not to show fear. Her face came level with his, those cosmic eyes examining him with intensity. Then, before he could react, she wrapped her long arms around him in what could only be described as an embrace. The shock of the gesture froze Leo in place. The being's skin was warm against his environmental suit, and he could feel a subtle vibration, almost like purring, emanating from her chest. The embrace was gentle but firm, careful not to crush him yet, clearly unwilling to let go. Minutes passed. Leo's scientific mind began categorizing sensations and observations even as the human part of him struggled to process this extraordinary encounter. He carefully moved one arm, intending to reach for his communicator, but the silver being responded by tightening her embrace slightly, making it clear that she preferred he remain still. "I need to contact my team," Leo said softly, uncertain if she could understand his words, but hoping his tone might convey meaning. "They'll be looking for me soon." The silver being made a sound then, a melodic series of tones that resonated through her chest and into Leo's body. It wasn't threatening, but it conveyed a definite negative response. She adjusted her position, still holding Leo firmly, but allowing him to face outward, his feet dangling above the ground. The message was clear. She wasn't letting go, but she was willing to accommodate his comfort. Leo's communicator suddenly crackled to life. "Tran, this is base. Your locator shows you've been stationary for 20 minutes. Status report?" The silver being tensed at the electronic voice, her embrace tightening fractionally. "I'm okay," Leo responded carefully, conscious of his unusual audience. "I've encountered something. Someone. I need Dr. Santos and Lieutenant Hale at my coordinates immediately. No weapons. I repeat, no weapons." A pause. "Confirm status. Tran, are you under duress?" Leo considered the question. Was he? The silver being hadn't harmed him, but she also wasn't releasing him. "Negative on duress, but the situation is delicate. Please approach slowly and non-aggressively." Another pause. "Understood. ETA 15 minutes. As the communication ended, Leo felt a subtle change in the being holding him. A gentle touch to his temple turned his head until he was looking into those violet eyes again. With her free hand, she pointed to herself and made a single musical tone. "Is that your name?" Leo asked. She repeated the sound, a rising note that reminded him of wind through crystal. "I'll call you Ithra," Leo said, approximating the sound as best his human vocal cords allowed. "Is that acceptable?" Ithra, for that was how he now thought of her, made a sound that seemed affirmative and adjusted her hold on him again, this time bringing him closer to her chest. Leo noticed something he hadn't seen before, a thin band of what appeared to be metal around her wrist, pulsing with a soft blue light. As he studied it, the light suddenly intensified, and Ithra made a startled sound. The band expanded, creating a holographic display of symbols that rotated in the air between them. One symbol pulsed in rhythm with what Leo realized was his own heartbeat. Another symbol, pulsing at a different rate, seemed to correspond to Ithra's. "A biological translator?" Leo wondered aloud, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the strangeness of his situation. "Are you trying to understand me?" Ithra made another musical sound, and the symbols shifted, forming new patterns. One pattern expanded, revealing what appeared to be a simplified human circulatory system, alongside a different, more complex system that Leo assumed represented Ithra's species. "Fascinating," Leo murmured. "You're comparing our physiologies?" As if in response, the band on Ithra's wrist emitted a soft pulse of light that spread to encompass Leo's chest. He felt a gentle warmth, and then, to his astonishment, a doubling sensation in his chest, as though he could feel two heartbeats, his own and another, faster rhythm that had to be Ithra's. The experience was intimate in a way Leo had never experienced. Neither clinical nor romantic, but something entirely different. A direct biological connection between two entirely separate species. For the first time in his life, Leo felt truly seen, truly acknowledged, not for his intellect or achievements, but simply for his existence as a living being. The sound of an approaching vehicle shattered the moment. Ithra's head snapped up, her posture tensing. The arms around Leo tightened protectively. "It's okay," Leo said quickly, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "They're my friends. They won't hurt you." Ithra made a doubtful sound, her gaze fixed on the approaching rover. Leo could feel her heartbeat accelerating through their strange connection, her fear palpable. The rover stopped 50 meters away, and two figures emerged slowly. Dr. Mira Santos, the expedition leader. Her dark hair pulled back in her customary tight bun, moved with careful, measured steps. Beside her, Lieutenant Hale, the security officer, maintained a deliberately non-threatening posture, despite the obvious tension in his shoulders. "Leo," Mira called, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Leo called back. "This is Ithra. She's holding me, as you can see, but she hasn't hurt me." Mira took a cautious step forward, then stopped when Ithra made a warning sound. "Can she understand us?" "I'm not sure," Leo replied. "She has some kind of biological interface device that seems to be attempting to establish communication, but we haven't progressed beyond basic physiological recognition." Mira nodded slowly, her scientific mind visibly processing the information. "Why is she holding you?" "That's the million-credit question," Leo said with a nervous laugh. "She approached me, examined me, and then just hugged me. She hasn't let go since, and she becomes agitated when I try to move away." Lieutenant Hale spoke for the first time, his voice low. "Do you need extraction, Tran?" Before Leo could answer, Ithra made a sharp, musical sound that needed no translation. Her embrace tightened, and the symbols from her wrist device flared brightly, creating a partial dome of light that curved protectively around Leo. "I'd say that's a no," Leo said, trying to keep his voice light despite the tension. "I think any attempt to separate us forcibly would be counterproductive." Mira stepped forward again, this time with her hands raised in a placating gesture. "We mean no harm," she said, addressing Ithra directly. "We're scientists, like Leo. We came to study this world, not to threaten its inhabitants." Ithra studied Mira intently, her head tilted in that curiously human gesture of consideration. After a moment, she relaxed slightly, though she maintained her hold on Leo. "The communication device on her wrist," Mira observed. "It's responding to your biorhythms?" Leo nodded. "It seems to be creating some kind of bridge between our physiologies. I can actually feel her heartbeat alongside my own." Mira's eyes widened with scientific excitement, despite the bizarre situation. "That's extraordinary," A form of empathic technology. Perhaps? A way to establish trust across species barriers? Or a way to monitor a captive, Lieutenant Hale muttered. Ithra made another musical sound, and the symbols around her wrist shifted again. New patterns formed, creating what appeared to be a simplified map of the surrounding area, with a pulsing light at its center. I think she's trying to show us something, Leo said, studying the holographic display. This location seems important. Mira approached cautiously, stopping when Ithra tensed. May I? She asked, gesturing to the display. After a moment's hesitation, Ithra extended her arm slightly, allowing Mira a better view while maintaining her hold on Leo. This matches the topography of the cavern system we detected 2 kilometers east, Mira said, after studying the display. We haven't explored it yet because of unstable readings. Leo felt a surge of excitement. I think she wants to take me there. Absolutely not, Lieutenant Hale said firmly. Protocol expressly forbids. With all due respect, Lieutenant, Leo interrupted. I think we're well beyond protocol at this point. We've discovered a sentient, technologically advanced species on a planet that was supposed to be limited to microbial life. This changes everything. Mira's expression was troubled. Leo, I understand your excitement, but Hale is right. We need to approach this methodically. We should establish a secure communication link with Earth, report our findings, and wait for instructions. Leo felt Ithra's response through their connection, a surge of what felt like anxiety or urgency. I don't think we have that kind of time, he said. She's trying to tell us something important. How could you possibly know that? Hale demanded. Leo gestured to the band on Ithra's wrist. This connection, it's not just physiological. There's an emotional component. She's worried, maybe even afraid. Mira studied them both thoughtfully. Leo has always had strong intuition with xenobiological subjects, she said finally. If he feels there's urgency, I'm inclined to trust his assessment. Dr. Santos, Hale protested. Planetary Council regulations clearly state. I'm aware of the regulations. Lieutenant, Mira interrupted, her tone sharpening. I'm also aware that we're facing an unprecedented situation. Sometimes, science requires flexibility. Ithra had been watching this exchange intently, her head moving from speaker to speaker. Now she made another musical sound and adjusted her hold on Leo again, positioning him so they were face to face. Her free hand moved to her chest, then to Leo's, then gestured toward the holographic map with a clear question in her eyes. Yes, Leo said, nodding emphatically. I'll go with you. Ithra's expression, for all its alien features, conveyed unmistakable relief. She turned her gaze to Mira and Lieutenant Hale, seeming to understand that they represented authority. Mira sighed heavily. We'll need to establish parameters, a time limit, regular communication checks, and we'll follow at a safe distance. Understood, Leo agreed quickly, before she could change her mind. Lieutenant Hale looked like he wanted to object further, but finally gave a curt nod. I'll prepare a security detail. No, Leo said firmly. Just you and Mira. Ithra is clearly sensitive to perceived threats. A security detail would only escalate tensions. After a moment of silent standoff, Hale conceded with obvious reluctance. 2 hours. Regular comms every 15 minutes. At the first sign of danger, we extract you by any means necessary. Agreed, Leo said, though he wondered privately how they planned to extract him from the arms of a 13-foot alien with technology they barely understood. As Mira and Hale returned to the rover to prepare, Ithra made a soft, musical sound that somehow conveyed gratitude. She adjusted her hold on Leo again, cradling him against her chest as she began to walk toward the eastern horizon, her long strides covering ground with effortless grace. Where are you taking me, Ithra? Leo asked softly, knowing she couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone conveyed curiosity rather than fear. Ithra glanced down at him. Those violet eyes, filled with an emotion Leo couldn't name, but somehow understood. Through their strange connection, he felt a sense of purpose, of necessity, and underneath it all, a profound loneliness that resonated with his own. The cavern entrance appeared suddenly, a dark slash in the red landscape, partially hidden by rock formations. Ithra paused at the threshold, the symbols on her wrist device shifting to create a new pattern that Leo recognized as a warning or caution. "Is it dangerous inside?" he asked. In response, Ithra adjusted her hold on him, positioning him more securely against her chest before ducking to enter the cavern. The darkness enveloped them momentarily before Ithra's wrist device emitted a soft glow, illuminating their surroundings. The cavern walls glittered with embedded crystals that caught and refracted the light from Ithra's device. As they proceeded deeper, Leo noticed that the crystals formed patterns, not random mineral deposits, but deliberate arrangements that reminded him of circuit boards or neural networks. "This is artificial," he breathed in wonder. "Your people built this?" Ithra made an affirmative sound, her pace quickening as they moved deeper into the complex. The tunnel widened into a vast chamber, where the crystal patterns converged on a central platform. "Here!" Ithra finally set Leo down, though she kept one hand lightly on his shoulder, as though reluctant to break contact completely. The platform hummed with energy, and as Ithra stepped onto it, the entire chamber illuminated with soft blue light. The crystals in the walls pulsed in rhythm with the band on Ithra's wrist, creating a three-dimensional display that filled the chamber. Leo gasped as he recognized the images: star maps, planetary systems, and at the center, Earth. "You know about us," he said, turning to Ithra in astonishment. "You've been studying us." Ithra made a series of musical sounds, clearly trying to explain. Her wrist device projected new symbols, more complex than before. One symbol Leo recognized immediately: the logo of the Interplanetary Council, humanity's governing body for extraterrestrial affairs. "You know about the Council, too," Leo said, his excitement turning to unease. "Is that why you're afraid? The Council's policies on first contact are not always diplomatic." Ithra's expression confirmed his suspicion. She projected another image, a fleet of ships bearing the Council's insignia, approaching a planet that looked similar to Hemora. Leo's blood ran cold. "They're coming here. When?" Before Ithra could respond, Leo's communicator crackled to life. "Tran, check in. Your locator shows you've entered the cavern system. Status report." "I'm fine," Leo responded, his mind racing. "Mira, you need to see this. Ithra has shown me something critical. The Interplanetary Council knows about her species. They're planning some kind of intervention." A moment of silence. Then, "We're entering the cavern now. Stay where you are." Ithra tensed at the sound of Mira's voice, her hand tightening slightly on Leo's shoulder. "They're friends," Leo reassured her. "They'll help us understand what's happening." Ithra didn't look convinced, but she didn't prevent Leo from moving toward the tunnel entrance to meet his colleagues. When Mira and Lieutenant Hale appeared, their expressions of awe at the crystal chamber momentarily overshadowed their concern. "This is incredible," Mira whispered, her scientific detachment crumbling in the face of such obvious technological advancement. "An entire data storage and projection system using crystalline structures." "Focus, Dr. Santos," Lieutenant Hale said sharply. "Tran, what's this about the Council?" Leo quickly explained what Ithra had shown him, pointing to the projections still hovering in the chamber. "I think she was trying to warn us, or ask for help. The Council must have detected signs of her civilization before we arrived." Mira's expression darkened. "That would explain the unusual parameters of our mission. We were told to focus exclusively on microbial studies, despite preliminary scans suggesting more complex biosignatures. They expected us to find nothing and confirm the planet was ripe for resource extraction, Hale said grimly. Standard procedure for frontier worlds. Leo felt sick. The Council's exploitation of uninhabited planets was well known, but rarely discussed openly. The discovery of sentient life would complicate their plans significantly, which explained their eagerness to classify Hemora as hosting only primitive life forms. We need to report this immediately, Leo said firmly. We have an ethical obligation to... To whom? Hale interrupted. The same council that deliberately misled us? That's apparently planning an intervention here. Ithra stepped forward, her luminous eyes moving from face to face as she assessed their reactions. The symbols around her wrist shifted again, showing a new image. The research station, surrounded by council ships. They're coming to our base? Mira asked, alarmed. Ithra made an affirmative sound, then projected a time sequence that made Leo's heart sink. Less than 6 hours, he translated. A council delegation is arriving at our station in less than 6 hours. Lieutenant Hale's professional demeanor cracked slightly. This complicates matters significantly. If they find evidence of Ithra or her civilization, they'll classify this entire operation under emergency protocols. We'll be quarantined, debriefed, and probably never allowed to publish our findings. And what will happen to Ithra? Leo asked, though he already knew the answer. Hale's silence was confirmation enough. Mira began pacing, her scientific mind visibly processing options. We need to be strategic. The council delegates won't be expecting resistance. If we can control the narrative from the beginning. Narrative? Leo interrupted incredulously. This isn't about optics. Mira, they'll take Ithra for study. You know what that means. The memory of previous council studies of exotic life forms hung unspoken between them. Clinical vivisections conducted under the guise of scientific necessity, always with the same conclusion: potential threat to human interests. Ithra watched this exchange with evident understanding, her posture growing more tense with each passing moment. Suddenly, she stepped forward and enveloped Leo in another embrace, this one conveying desperation rather than the earlier gentleness. Through their connection, Leo felt waves of anxiety, determination, and something else, a fierce protectiveness that took his breath away. Ithra wasn't just afraid for herself. She was afraid for him too. I won't let them take you, he promised quietly, returning her embrace as best he could, given their size difference. We'll find a solution. Lieutenant Hale cleared his throat. We need to return to the station immediately. Prepare for the council's arrival. Perhaps we can divert them. Claim a technical emergency that requires their assistance elsewhere. And buy time for what? Mira asked practically. Leo looked up at Ithra, a plan forming in his mind. For documentation, irrefutable evidence of peaceful first contact. The council operates in shadows and redacted reports. If we can broadcast clear evidence of Ithra's intelligence and non-hostile nature before they arrive. That's a significant risk, Hale warned. Career-ending at minimum. Some things are more important than careers, Leo said firmly. Mira, you always said scientific truth should transcend politics. This is your chance to prove it. Mira's expression shifted from uncertainty to resolution. You're right. We entered this field to discover and protect knowledge, not suppress it. She turned to Hale. Lieutenant, are you with us? Hale hesitated. Years of military discipline warring with his own ethical code. My duty is to protect this expedition, he said finally. I believe that includes protecting the integrity of our discoveries, even from our own government. Ithra seemed to sense their alliance, her posture relaxing slightly. She released Leo from her embrace, but kept a hand on his shoulder, the connection between them maintained through her wrist device. We should move quickly, Mira said. The council delegation will expect a proper welcome. We can use that time to prepare our broadcast." As they exited the cavern, Leo noticed Ithra retrieving something from a recess in the wall. A small crystal, similar to those embedded in the chamber, but pulsing with its own inner light. She pressed it into Leo's hand, folding his fingers around it with a meaningful look. "What is it?" he asked. In response, the crystal synchronized with Ithra's wrist device, creating a miniature version of the projection they'd seen in the chamber, evidence of her civilization, their technological achievements, and most importantly, a record of peaceful interaction with humans. Data storage, Leo realized, evidence they can't easily destroy. The journey back to the station was tense, each person lost in their own thoughts about the consequences of their planned actions. Ithra moved with surprising stealth for her size, keeping to rock formations for cover as they approached the compound. The station appeared normal on approach, the cluster of prefabricated structures humming with the usual activity of a research base. The other team members were visible, going about their routine tasks, unaware of the profound discovery their colleagues had made. "We need to brief the others," Mira said as they paused at the perimeter. "They deserve to know what's happening and make their own choices." Leo nodded, though concern gnawed at him. Not everyone will risk their career, or worse, to defy the council. "We respect their decision either way," Mira said firmly. "But we owe them the truth." Ithra made a musical sound that drew their attention. She pointed to her wrist device, then to the station's communication array with obvious meaning. "You want to use our broadcast system?" Leo asked. Ithra nodded, making another sound that Leo somehow understood as confirmation. "That could work," Mira said thoughtfully. "Our array has direct links to multiple academic and scientific networks. If we can bypass the council's filters—" "I can handle that," Lieutenant Hale said unexpectedly. "Security protocols give me access to emergency override systems." Leo felt a surge of hope. "Then let's move quickly. We have less than 5 hours before the council arrives." They entered the station through a secondary access point, avoiding the main research areas where most of the team would be working. Ithra had to duck and squeeze through human-sized corridors, but she managed with surprising grace, never releasing her light hold on Leo's shoulder. In Mira's private office, they gathered the senior research staff, a carefully selected group of 6 scientists whom Mira trusted implicitly. Their reactions to Ithra ranged from scientific excitement to undisguised fear, but all listened intently as Leo explained the situation. "The council lied to us," he concluded. "They knew this planet harbored intelligent life and sent us to unknowingly confirm it was uninhabited, so they could proceed with resource extraction." Dr. Alara Chen, the team's astrophysicist, shook her head in disgust. "Typical. Remember what happened on Proxima b?" The room fell silent, the memory of that ecological disaster still raw. The council had declared the planet biologically insignificant, despite evidence of complex ecosystems, leading to catastrophic mining operations that destroyed unique life forms before they could be properly studied. "What's your plan?" asked Dr. Kazuo Yamamoto, the geologist. "A direct broadcast," Mira explained. "Unfiltered evidence of Ithra's civilization and her peaceful interaction with us. Once it's in the public domain, the council can't easily suppress it." "You're talking about career suicide," Dr. Yamamoto said bluntly. "The council will claim national security, classify everything, and probably court-martial Lieutenant Hale for good measure." "I've considered the consequences," Hale said quietly. "Some lines shouldn't be crossed, even for duty." The room fell silent again as each person wrestled with the ethical implications. Finally, Dr. Chen spoke up. "I joined this expedition to discover new life forms, not to help corporations decide which planets to strip mine," she said firmly. "I'm in." One by one, the others agreed, though 2 researchers chose to remain officially uninvolved, a decision the others respected. "We need to move quickly," Mira said once consensus was reached. Roya, can you prepare the broadcast equipment? Kazuo, work with Lieutenant Hale on bypassing the security filters. Leo, you and Ithra need to decide exactly what information to share. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Leo led Ithra to his small laboratory, where they could work without interruption. The space was cramped for her tall frame, but she settled on the floor, her legs folded elegantly beneath her. We need to show them who you are, Leo said, activating his recording equipment. Your civilization, your technology, your peaceful intentions. Ithra seemed to understand. Her wrist device projected a series of images. Her world, her people, their achievements. The projections showed a civilization that had evolved very differently from humanity's, with an emphasis on biological integration with technology rather than mechanical solutions. Fascinating, Leo murmured, recording everything. Your people developed biotech instead of machines. Ithra made an affirmative sound, projecting more images that showed how her people lived in harmony with their environment, adapting themselves rather than reshaping their world. That's why our scans didn't detect your civilization, Leo realized. We were looking for artificial structures, electromagnetic signatures, but your technology is organic, integrated with the natural world. The communication continued for hours, Ithra patiently displaying aspects of her civilization while Leo recorded and asked questions through gestures and expressions that her empathic technology helped translate. Through it all, she maintained physical contact with him, as though the connection had become necessary. Lieutenant Hale interrupted them as they were reviewing the compiled data. Council ships have entered the system, he reported tersely. ETA 90 minutes. We need to broadcast now or risk losing our window. Leo nodded, gathering the data crystal Ithra had given him and the recordings they'd made. We're ready. Has Dr. Santos assembled the team? In the communication center, Hale confirmed. Everything's prepared for a system-wide broadcast on all scientific channels. As they made their way through the station, Leo noticed the tense atmosphere. Staff members who hadn't been directly informed clearly sensed something significant was happening, eyeing Ithra with mixtures of wonder and apprehension as she ducked through corridors. The communication center was crowded with equipment and people when they arrived. Mira stood at the central console, her normally composed expression tight with stress. We've identified 47 scientific networks that will receive our broadcast simultaneously, she reported. Once it begins, the Council won't be able to stop the transmission without shutting down the entire interplanetary communication grid. And the content? Leo asked. A simple message, peaceful first contact with an advanced civilization on Himora, with supporting evidence. Mira replied. We're identifying ourselves as the research team, taking full responsibility for the unauthorized disclosure. Leo felt a surge of gratitude for his colleagues' courage. Let's do this. As they prepared the final broadcast sequence, an alarm suddenly blared through the station. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors, and the main computer system announced in a calm, automated voice. Attention! Incoming Council priority vessel. All personnel report to main reception area for official delegation. They're early, Hale said grimly. Someone must have warned them. Mira's expression hardened. Proceed with the broadcast. Roya, Kazuo, complete the setup. Leo, you and Ithra need to record your introduction now. As the others worked frantically to establish the broadcast connection, Leo stood before the camera with Ithra beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. He felt strangely calm despite the chaos around them, anchored by her presence and the absolute certainty that what they were doing was right. My name is Leo Tran, xenobiologist with the Himora Research Expedition, he began, his voice steady. This broadcast contains evidence of peaceful first contact with an advanced civilization native to this planet. I am accompanied by Ithra, a representative of this civilization, who approached our team with peaceful intentions. Ithra activated her wrist device, projecting images of her world and people as Leo narrated their discoveries. The connection between them seemed to strengthen as they worked together, Ithra responding to his words with precisely timed visual evidence. The Interplanetary Council was aware of this civilization before our expedition began, Leo continued, his voice hardening slightly. Yet they deliberately misclassified this planet as hosting only microbial life, presumably to facilitate resource extraction operations. We are broadcasting this evidence to ensure scientific truth prevails over political expediency. As he finished speaking, alarms blared again, more urgently this time. Lieutenant Hale, monitoring security systems, called out. Council security forces have entered the station. They're heading this way. Broadcast status? Mira demanded. 60 seconds to transmission, Dr. Chen reported tensely. We need to maintain connection until the data package is complete. The sound of booted feet approached in the corridor outside. Ithra tensed, pulling Leo closer to her side protectively. Her wrist device pulsed with increased energy, creating a faint shimmer in the air around them. The door slid open, revealing a council official flanked by 4 armed security officers. The official, a tall, thin man with the cold eyes of a career bureaucrat, surveyed the room with obvious displeasure. This facility is now under council jurisdiction, he announced without preamble. All research activities are suspended, pending security review. What is the meaning of this? Unauthorized gathering. His eyes widened as he noticed Ithra, his composure cracking momentarily before he regained control. Secure the alien specimen, he ordered sharply. Priority Alpha containment protocols. The security officers raised their weapons, specialized restraint devices designed for unknown biological entities. Leo stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between Ithra and the security team. She is not a specimen, he said firmly. She is a sentient being who approached us peacefully. Any attempt to contain her will be documented as an act of aggression against a peaceful civilization. The council official's expression hardened. Dr. Tran, you are interfering with a council security operation. Step aside immediately or face severe consequences. Broadcast initiated, Dr. Chen announced quietly. Data package transmitting. The official's head snapped toward her, understanding dawning in his cold eyes. Stop that transmission immediately, he barked at his security team. Lieutenant Hale stepped forward, his military bearing a stark contrast to the scientific staff around him. Sir, with respect, that transmission contains scientific evidence of critical importance to humanity's understanding of extraterrestrial life. I cannot in good conscience allow its suppression. You forget yourself, Lieutenant, the official said icily. Your duty is to the Council. My duty is to humanity, Hale replied steadily. Sometimes, those aren't the same thing. The tension in the room was palpable as the security team hesitated, caught between their direct orders and the moral stand being taken by the expedition members. Ithra watched this confrontation with evident understanding, her luminous eyes moving from face to face. Suddenly, she stepped forward, gently moving Leo aside despite his protective stance. Her wrist device pulsed with energy as she faced the council official directly. The official took an involuntary step back. Restrain it immediately, he ordered, his voice rising. 2 security officers moved forward with restraint devices. But before they could reach Ithra, her wrist device emitted a pulse of energy that spread throughout the room. Every electronic system briefly flickered, including the officers' weapons and restraints. Transmission complete, Dr. Chen announced triumphantly. Full data package successfully broadcast to all 47 networks. The council official's face contorted with fury. You fools have no idea what you've done. The diplomatic implications alone are exactly why this evidence needed to be preserved, Mira interrupted firmly. The council's policy of suppression and exploitation ends here, at least for Hemora. A third alarm sounded through the station, different from the previous warnings. The main computer announced, "Warning, unknown energy signature detected. Station power systems compromised." The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness before emergency backups activated, casting everything in a dim red glow. In the sudden confusion, Ithra moved with surprising speed, gathering Leo against her chest in the now familiar embrace. Before anyone could react, she was moving through the doorway, her tall frame forcing the security team to scatter. "Stop them!" the council official shouted, but his words were lost in the cacophony of alarms and confusion. Leo, held securely in Ithra's arms, felt a surge of adrenaline as she raced through the station corridors. Behind them, he could hear shouts and the sound of pursuit. But Ithra moved with purpose and knowledge that suggested she had studied the station's layout carefully. They burst through an emergency exit into the crimson landscape of Hemora. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the desert as Ithra ran toward the eastern horizon, toward the caverns where they had first communicated. "Where are we going?" Leo asked, though he knew she couldn't understand his words. Through their connection, he felt her determination and something else, a plan taking shape. Her wrist device projected a brief image of what appeared to be a vehicle or craft hidden within the cavern system. As they crested a ridge, Leo looked back to see several figures emerging from the station, the security team in pursuit. But something else caught his attention. More ships descending from orbit, their sleek designs unmistakably council vessels. "They're bringing reinforcements," he realized aloud. The broadcast must have triggered emergency protocols. Ithra made a musical sound that somehow conveyed both agreement and determination. Her pace increased, her long strides eating up the distance between the station and the cavern entrance. They reached the caverns just as darkness fell completely, the last rays of the twin suns disappearing below the horizon. Ithra navigated the crystalline passages with confidence, moving deeper into the complex than they had ventured before. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that took Leo's breath away. Unlike the data repository they had visited earlier, this space contained what could only be described as a hangar, housing several sleek vessels that appeared to be grown rather than built, their organic lines reminiscent of nautilus shells. Ithra approached one of the smaller craft, placing her hand against its surface. The vessel responded to her touch, a seam appearing and widening to allow entry. She set Leo down gently for the first time in hours, though she maintained contact with one hand on his shoulder. "Is this your ship?" Leo asked in wonder, studying the organic technology that surrounded them. Ithra made an affirmative sound, gesturing for him to enter the craft. As Leo hesitated, uncertain of her intentions, his communicator suddenly activated. "Tran, this is Mira. Do you copy?" "I'm here," he responded quickly. "We're in some kind of hangar in the cavern system. Ithra has access to vehicles." "Listen carefully," Mira said, her voice tight with urgency. "The Council is deploying a full containment team. They're classifying Ithra's people as a potential threat to human interests. But our broadcast worked. Scientific networks across 3 systems are demanding transparency. There's a chance to change the narrative if you can stay ahead of them long enough." "What about you and the others?" Leo asked. "We're being detained for a security debriefing, but Lieutenant Hale managed to secure assurances of proper legal representation. We'll be all right." A pause. "What matters now is protecting Ithra and establishing genuine diplomatic contact with her people." Leo looked at the alien woman who had literally embraced him without hesitation, who had trusted him despite every reason for caution. Through their connection, he felt her urgency, but also her consideration. She was waiting for his decision. "I understand," he told Mira. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect her and establish peaceful contact." "Be careful, Leo," Mira said softly, "and make history." As the communication ended, Leo turned to Ithra with resolution. "Let's go." Ithra made a musical sound of approval, guiding him into the craft. The interior adjusted to accommodate his human proportions, even as Ithra settled into what appeared to be a pilot's position. The vessel sealed seamlessly behind them, and crystalline displays illuminated around Ithra's hands. "Can this outrun council ships?" Leo asked, more to himself than to Ithra. To his surprise, Ithra made a sound that could only be interpreted as confident affirmation. Her hands moved across the crystalline controls, and the craft hummed to life, lifting effortlessly from the hangar floor. The journey through the cavern tunnels was nerve-wracking, the organic ship navigating tight passages with uncanny precision. They emerged into the night sky of Hemora, just as council searchlights began sweeping the desert floor. Ithra's ship accelerated upward, its technology seemingly undetectable by conventional sensors as they passed directly over a council vessel without triggering any response. Within minutes, they were high above the planet's surface. The research station reduced to a tiny cluster of lights in the vast crimson desert. As they gained altitude, Leo felt a moment of panic. Was Ithra taking him off planet? Away from his team, his mission, his world? But through their connection, he sensed reassurance. This wasn't an abduction, but a strategic retreat. The ship leveled off in the upper atmosphere, hovering above the cloud layer, where they could observe without being easily detected. Ithra's wrist device projected a global communication interface, showing the spread of their broadcast across human networks. Leo watched in amazement as the evidence they had gathered sparked immediate reactions. Scientific communities were demanding council transparency. Ethics committees were convening emergency sessions. Public forums were alive with discussion about the implications of peaceful contact with an advanced civilization. "It's working," Leo said in wonder. "They can't suppress this. Too many people know now." Ithra made a musical sound of satisfaction, adjusting their position to avoid a high-altitude council patrol. Her wrist device projected new information, a timeline, a strategy, a hope. Through their connection, Leo understood her plan. They would remain hidden until the initial council containment effort failed, until the scientific community's demands for transparency forced a change in approach. Then, with human public opinion firmly behind peaceful contact, Ithra's people could emerge from hiding without fear of exploitation or aggression. "How long?" Leo asked, gesturing to the timeline. Ithra indicated a period that seemed to represent several Earth days. Not long in the grand scheme of things, but an eternity when hiding from the most powerful human organization in the galaxy. As the hours passed, they maintained their vigil above the clouds, monitoring communications and moving periodically to avoid detection. Ithra showed Leo how to access the ship's food synthesis system, providing him with nutrition that was surprisingly palatable for human consumption. During quiet moments, their strange bond deepened. Ithra's wrist device evolved its communication capabilities, creating more sophisticated translation algorithms that allowed them to share basic concepts. Leo learned that her people had been observing humanity for decades, concerned about their expansionist tendencies, but hopeful for eventual peaceful contact. "Why did you approach me?" Leo asked during one such exchange, forming the question with both words and gestures. Ithra's response came as a series of images through her device. Leo standing alone in the desert dawn, observing with respect rather than exploitation. His solitary figure reminiscent of her own isolation as a scout for her people. "You were alone," Leo translated in wonder. "Like me." Ithra made an affirmative sound, her violet eyes conveying understanding that transcended their biological differences. Through their connection, Leo felt what could only be described as recognition, two souls from different worlds who nonetheless saw themselves in each other. On the third day of their atmospheric vigil, the communication networks erupted with breaking news. The Council, facing unprecedented scientific and public pressure, had issued a formal statement acknowledging the existence of sentient life on Hemora and committing to peaceful diplomatic engagement under transparency protocols. More significantly, The scientific team at the research station, including Mira and Lieutenant Hale, had been released from detention and reinstated as the primary contact point for further interaction with Ithra's civilization. "They did it," Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. "They forced the council to back down." Ithra's response was a musical sound of cautious optimism. Her wrist device displayed the council statement alongside her own analysis, highlighting contingencies and ambiguities in the human declaration. "You're right to be careful," Leo acknowledged. "The council rarely surrenders control completely, but this is a beginning." As they prepared to return to the surface, Ithra did something unexpected. She deactivated the ship's autopilot and guided Leo's hands to the crystalline controls, inviting him to fly the craft himself. "Are you sure?" he asked, startled by the offer. Ithra made an affirmative sound, adjusting her position to help guide his movements. As Leo tentatively engaged with the organic technology, he felt the ship respond not just to his physical inputs, but somehow to his intentions, creating a three-way connection between pilot, vessel, and Ithra herself. The descent to the surface was exhilarating, the ship responding with intuitive grace to Leo's guidance. They approached the research station cautiously, circling to assess the situation before landing. The station had been transformed in their absence. Council ships remained in position, but the aggressive containment equipment had been replaced with diplomatic and scientific personnel. A new structure had been erected beside the main compound, a meeting facility with architecture that could accommodate beings of Ithra's size. "They're actually preparing for proper contact," Leo observed in amazement. Ithra's wrist device scanned the area thoroughly before she indicated a landing zone away from the main compound, a precaution that Leo appreciated. Despite the apparent change in council approach, caution remained essential. As the ship settled gently onto the red desert floor, Leo felt a strange reluctance to exit. These days, in Ithra's company, isolated from his own kind, but profoundly connected to her, had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. "What happens now?" he asked softly. Ithra's response came through their connection. Images of formal meetings, cultural exchanges, the slow, careful building of trust between their peoples. But beneath these diplomatic projections lay a more personal message. The bond they had formed would not be broken by these larger events. The ship's entrance opened to reveal the Hemera dawn, the twin suns just beginning their ascent above the horizon. In the distance, figures emerged from the research station: Mira, Lieutenant Hale, and several others, approaching slowly and without weapons. Leo stepped out onto the red sand, Ithra following close behind, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder in the gesture that had become so familiar. Together, they walked forward to meet humanity's representatives. Mira's face broke into a rare, genuine smile as they approached. "You two certainly know how to make an entrance," she said, by way of greeting. "The council actually backed down?" Leo asked, still finding it difficult to believe. "Not entirely," Lieutenant Hale said realistically. "But your broadcast forced their hand. Too many influential scientists saw the evidence. The narrative of peaceful first contact took hold before they could establish their containment story." "What happens now?" Leo asked, unconsciously echoing the question he had just posed to Ithra. "Now," Mira said, "we do what we should have done from the beginning. Proper diplomatic contact, cultural exchange, mutual learning." She looked up at Ithra with genuine respect. On equal terms. Ithra made a musical sound that needed no translation, her posture relaxing slightly as she assessed the humans before her. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The research station transformed into a first contact facility, with scientists and diplomats arriving from throughout human space. Ithra's people emerged gradually from their hidden enclaves across Hemera, revealing a civilization far more extensive than even Leo had suspected. Through it all, Leo and Ithra remained at the center, the human and the alien who had bridged their civilizations through a simple act of trust and connection. Their unique bond became both a symbol and a practical necessity. As Ithra's empathic technology evolved to facilitate broader communication between their peoples. 2 weeks after their return, as the formal diplomatic framework was being established, Leo found himself standing with Ithra at the same spot where they had first met. The twin suns were setting, casting the now familiar crimson landscape in golden light. "I never asked why you hugged me," Leo said, looking up at her tall figure. "That first day, when you could have done anything, observed, communicated, even captured me, you chose to embrace me. Why?" Ithra's wrist device had evolved to translate basic speech, though the musical quality of her language remained untranslatable. The symbols that appeared between them formed words in approximate English. "Your world touches without meaning. My world means without touching. I needed both." Leo considered this profound observation. Human handshakes, casual contact, meaningless physical gestures contrasted with Ithra's people, who reserved physical contact for only the most significant connections, but communicated meaning in ways humans were only beginning to understand. "And now," he asked, "the diplomats are establishing protocols, formal structures for our peoples to interact. Where does that leave us?" Ithra looked down at him, those violet eyes reflecting the sunset. Her response came both through the translator and through their connection. "Bridges remain after crossings, different but changed by connecting." Leo understood. Their unique bond, the human scientist and the alien who had embraced him, would continue to evolve as their civilizations learned from each other. They were forever changed by their connection, regardless of formal diplomatic structures. As the last light faded from the horizon, Ithra bent down once more, enfolding Leo in an embrace that echoed their first meeting. But this time, after a moment that seemed to stretch between worlds, she gently released him. No words were needed as she straightened to her full height, her silver skin catching the starlight. With a final musical sound that resonated with both farewell and promise, Ithra turned and walked into the desert night, toward a hidden entrance to her people's domain. Leo watched until her tall figure disappeared against the darkening landscape. He knew this wasn't an ending, but a transition, from the intense personal connection that had begun their journey to something broader and more consequential for both their civilizations. The research station lights glowed behind him, where humans and Ithra's people were already beginning the long, complex process of truly understanding each other. Leo knew he should return, continue his role in this historic endeavor. But for a moment longer, he stood alone in the Hemera night, feeling the lingering warmth of Ithra's embrace and the profound certainty that across the gulf of biology, culture, and cosmic distance, connection was still possible. In the end, it wasn't science or diplomacy that had bridged their worlds, but something much simpler and more profound. The moment when a 13-foot alien girl had bent down to hug him, and then refused to let go.